Data Protection Bill 2023 into law. Now, this Data Protection Act provides a legal framework for the protection of personal information and the practice of data protection in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So, the president has signed the data protection bill into law. Now, I have there's a challenge, there's a possible challenge to all of this. Now, this bill was considered and passed by the Ninth National Assembly, both chambers, that's the Senate and the Federal House of Representatives. And it was subsequently placed on the table of the ex-president, President Buhari. And for whatever reason, he did not sign the bill, and the Ninth Assembly has passed. President Buhari has since concluded his tenure. Now, it can be construed legally to mean that in his following his inability to sign the bill into law, he had in effect vetoed the bill. Now, if that is the case, then the proper thing to have been done was for the 10th, was in fact, assuming it was still within the Ninth Assembly, I would strongly argue that they would then have had to pass a two-thirds majority in each house, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, to overturn that veto. Now, a 10th National Assembly is in place. A new president is in office. I'm not sure about the legality of the current president signing a bill into law that was passed by the previous National Assembly. So that is the legal position. So that is the issue dealing with the propriety or legality of this new law. Now let's assume that everything is kosher and everything has been done properly, or the courts find that it was still done properly. Nigeria has needed a data protection law for the longest time possible. We have seen numerous instances of how personal data of Nigerians has been freely used or freely not being kept properly. And if we look at the developed world, if we look at North America, we look at Europe, we even look at Asia, steps have been taken to protect data because data is very important. And we've seen important international tech giants fined repeatedly by the EU, by the US, for data breaches and for not keeping data properly. Now, this law, if it does stand, is a very good law because it then puts extra burdens on people who collect data to keep them properly and ensure that they restrict to the barest minimum any possible data breaches. Now, it will take time for our government agencies to come to terms with the existence of this law and
Mm.
its implications and its obligations upon them. And it is incumbent that they train these government employees to understand the importance of data protection and why it should be kept and why data should be kept properly. So it's a good step, but beyond passing or beyond signing the law, assuming it does stand, these things have to be done to educate not just the people in government, but even people in the private sector, because they also, some of them collect information. That there is a duty incumbent upon you once you receive or aggregate data that is not yours to keep it properly and ensure that only the right people have access to it under the right circumstances as prescribed by the Act.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mr. C. So, is there a chance that we would see a lawsuit coming up to challenge the legality of this? Is this possible?
It is possible. So if Sarah, so the likely candidates will possibly, number one will probably be Sarah or any other lawyer who has the time to investigate the propriety of this act because it's something that we possibly go the whole course of the Nigerian court system from the
Mm.
High Court up to the Supreme Court, and this may take a number of years.
All right. Well, let us know what your thoughts are. WhatsApp number is 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at smooth981. This one comes from Daily Trust. The NDLEA and the Narcotics Control Bureau of India have agreed to collaborate to block the traffic of illicit drugs between Nigeria and India.
this is a welcome development because, as we all know, the drug problem is a real problem. It's, I think, almost even $1 billion industry across the world. A lot of people, make money off it. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about Pablo Escobar and things like that. And if we followed his story, we can see all the shenanigans that went into his capture and
Right.
recapture and all of that. So to give us just an idea of how significant that industry is to those who push it. So it's quite interesting that this agreement has been signed at the highest levels because collaboration is very important. So along that, the Lagos India route, somewhere along the line, you also have Dubai, and this is like
The people that are smuggling drugs in Dubai
through
through Dubai, isn't
through
that like an instant? Okay, maybe not Dubai. Saudi Arabia
well,
might
I,
be
I don't
more.
know how they do it, but
Okay.
that's sort of like the route,
Mm.
and then even East Africa as well, coming into this part and then going into other parts of West Africa. So this is a really significant agreement, which hopefully, if implemented properly, would impact greatly on the sale of the trafficking of illicit drugs. In Nigeria already, for those who may not know, we have a real drug problem, especially amongst the youths. I remember there was a time there was a foreign media, I think it was BBC, that did a documentary on abuse of, even, was it
Codeine.
cough syrup, codeine?
Mm.
Yes. So, and that's just codeine. So that's not even talking about all other psychotropic drugs, opioids, and other things like that. Which are probably more accessible to those with a lot more funding. And the thing with um, drug addiction is, once you're on, you're on. And typically for some of these drugs, you need to, to get off, you need to, take reducing quantities of those drugs. So you can imagine the impact. So, the impact of this on the lives of the individuals and ultimately on the life of the economy as well, because it reduces the amount of people that we have who are available to contribute to the economy. Also, it impacts on the our economy negatively as well, in terms of how it takes away resources and funding for other things that would have focused on. Rather, we're focusing on this. So my expectation would be that Nigeria and India would sit down and agree on specific modalities and approaches as to how to go about this. The level of cooperation should go beyond just signing to and drill down to as much as fashioning out a system that is unique to both countries. So whether it is even drugs flying from here to there or there to here, there are processes in terms of stemming this illicit trade unified.
Mm. All right, let's go on to this article, and it comes from Punch. The president has indefinitely suspended the chairman of the EFCC, Abdul Rashid Bawa, from office. Now, this is to allow for a thorough investigation into his conduct while in office. There have been several allegations of abuse of office leveled against the chairman.
Thank you, Zibby. So this sounds like deja vu because the suspended chairman of the EFCC came into office following the suspension of his predecessor, ostensibly on conduct whilst in office. And one thing we note about that suspension was the predecessor never returned to office. As soon as he was suspended, that was that. Now, the statement says there have been a number of weighty allegations against the EFCC chairman, and that is why he's been suspended so that investigations can be carried out. Now, it's not uncommon in Nigeria to find that when a new guy assumes office, he would prefer his own people to be in. And he then looks for ways to ensure that his own people get in. And one of the ways to do that is to probe the incumbent guys who are in the various agencies and then suspend them because looking at the act, it's a bit more difficult getting them out of office if you have to fire them because they're supposed to have a statutorily protected tenure of office. But if you suspend them and then you look for dirt on them, the next thing that happens is you could possibly lean on them to resign. But from all of this, I think it's almost it's almost clear, it's almost certain that Mr. Bauer will not be returning to office as EFCC chairman, and we can then expect first an interim appointment, which may later be made substantive. And beyond all of this media reports or suspensions, if indeed he's found guilty or it's found or determined that he has a case to answer, will he be prosecuted in court? Only time will tell.
So there is a possibility that this could be some sort of spring cleaning.
Well, so depending on your perspective, it could be spring cleaning. It could just be that I need my guys in, so I need to get these guys out. And let's not forget that the AFCC doesn't exactly have a sparkling reputation or media perception, because some elements within the AFCC are perceived to be corrupt. Whether or not that is in fact the truth remains to be determined. But just like the Nigerian police force, just like a number of other government agencies, there is this public perception that there are elements within these organizations that are corrupt, and that has also contributed to the deficit of trust between government and its agencies and the citizens.
All right, I've got a few messages coming through. Ken says it looks like EFCC needs another EFCC. What do you think about a prosecuting body whose leadership is always under investigation, whose leadership is always ousted? If the EFCC has outlived its usefulness, let's just do away with it rather than dwelling in self-deceit. And Bosun says President Tinubu really hit the ground running, playing catch me if you can with the tabloids with his back-to-back hits. Very impressive so far. All right, let's go on to the next story. The WhatsApp number to send your thoughts across to is 0809 440 981. This comes from Punch. Now, the Lagos State Office for Disability Affairs has appealed to various local government areas and councils to complement the vision of the state government in creating education and healthcare policies and programs that will directly impact the lives of persons living with disabilities.
We've spoken a number of times about the status of disabled people, people living with disabilities, across the country, and how there hasn't been a lot of focus on, making life easier for them in terms of ease of access to facilities, resources, and all of that. So with this now, it's apparent that there's a bit more realization, from the Lagos state government to fashion out, specific healthcare and education programs targeted at the disabled people living with disabilities. So these are people, typically people with mobility issues, vision issues, hearing issues, and if we look at, other societies where consideration has been made for such people, we see that, there are schools with facilities and tools designed to help them, learn, and then those facilities are also integrated into society. So it's easy for someone who's visually impaired to be able to walk on the road, for example, because they trust that they won't get hit by a car or pushed somewhere, you know. So that's ultimately where it seems that we're heading as well. So here we also have schools, that are focused on people living with disabilities, but integrating that knowledge that is provided to them into society is where the gap is. So it's very important. And then this is, a call at the lowest level of government, which is the local government. So it's very necessary that at the local government, at the local council development agency area level, that plans are also made to be able to fashion out programs targeted at preparing these people for society as well. But not just stopping there as well, we also need to reflect, like I said, on how we integrate them into society. So for example, if the person was visually impaired, can they comfortably walk from their house to somewhere else?
Right.
If a person had hearing issues, the same thing. So these are little things that we need to focus on. So I'm not sure whether they are supporting laws, or even if they're supporting laws, we need to be able to integrate those laws into actionable programs. So, let's just stop speaking about how we want to improve this, improve that, improve that. Let's actually go ahead and do the work.
All right.
So I just wanted to say something in response to what Gbubemi said. I agree with what he said. But if anyone is truly expecting any of the local governments to take this issue seriously, I don't know what to tell the person.
So you don't think they're going to take it seriously?
They don't take their normal work seriously. They're not going to take this seriously.
Mm.
And to make provisions for persons with disabilities, I agree that provision has to be made. It requires money. So we now have a lot of competing needs with very limited resources. What are the chances? What are the odds that with the limited resources and competing needs, that any local government will then decide to focus on persons with disabilities and make complete provision for them? I don't know any local government that will do that.
All right, well, let us know what your thoughts are. 0809 Do stay with us. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1.
I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to say
Is there
that.
nobody here to say it to? Huh?
Typically, all local governments will share. Allegedly.
Hi people, my name is Praise, and if you want good music, stay tuned to Smooth 98.1. You are an orchestra. Watching you move is like listening to a symphony of body parts directed by a maestro. When you walk, it is like watching a G clef stroll across an octave accented by a C sharp. When you talk, the cadence of your voice is a tenor saxophone, making love to a cello at perfect pitch. And you are so smooth. That's why we keep it here on 98.1. This is Justin EJ, signing out.
98.1.
The best of everything in the morning, and more.
A little less conversation, a little more action, please.
Weekday mornings, 6 till 10.
You're listening to Freshly Pressed and Smooth 98.1. Our analysts this morning, Mr. C and Gbubemi, were looking at the news stories across the headlines. So let us know what your thoughts are. 0809 And we're also streaming live on YouTube. So just search for Smooth 981 and you can join the live stream. From The Nation, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has uncovered phantom projects in the 819 billion naira 2022 supplementary budgets. Mr. C?
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So, this is the latest episode in the never-ending series of phantom projects, corruption, and just generally bad behavior that Nigeria continues to witness. Now, according to the EFCC, it has uncovered phantom projects in the supplementary budget for last year. And it claims that this budget was filled with phantom projects by members of the Ninth National Assembly, and that they include projects that had already been completed, projects that were being duplicated, amongst other things. Now, it's all good to say that you have discovered this. We don't know when you discovered this. Now, upon your discovery, what have you done? Have you preferred criminal charges against any of the identified persons? So, have you even identified anyone specifically with regards to these claims? So you say that they're phantom projects. How did you arrive at the conclusion that they were phantom projects? Did you actually visit the project sites? Did you carry out the detailed investigation? Who are the people? Who is the person? Who are the people responsible for any of these phantom projects? Why are you unable to prosecute them? Why are you coming to the media to tell us you've uncovered phantom projects? Now, so once you've said this, does that then remove the need to carry out the necessary prosecution? And if you do prosecute, do you have all the evidence you need at this point in time to secure convictions? Now, beyond all of this, it speaks generally to the continuing bad behavior of members of the National Assembly at both levels. From the report, it is suggested, or it has been indicated, that a principal minority officer, what that means is The officer belongs to the minority, the opposition party, or is a senior member of the opposition party. What does that tell you? Corruption, bad behavior, does not know party, does not know tribe, does not know religion. It has no consideration. The only thing that unites members of that vanguard or that assembly is the love for money and the greed that encapsulates all of it. Now, how do we prevent this going forward? Honestly, I don't have the answers because if the people who should be carrying out the necessary oversight functions are the ones engaged in this sort of behavior, what then do we expect? And the report speaks to the undue pressure members of the National Assembly place on ministries, departments, and agencies. Now, it's no secret that they're able to place that sort of pressure because every year they have to come and defend their budget proposals before the National Assembly. And we've continued to hear stories from previous National Assemblies of how ministries, departments, and agencies that refused to pay more had very stressful and tasking budget defense sessions. And in some cases, the budgets they presented were seriously amended. So let's see what comes out of this story. I'm not holding my breath. And we'll see what happens.
Okay, I'd also like to add to that. Riding on what Mr. C had said, I think it's about time that this constituency project thing should be ended. It was something that was started during the Obasanjo administration. Legislators are supposed to be lawmakers. That's their job. They ideally should not have anything to do with constituency projects. I can't quite remember exactly why, the decision was made to enable them, have constituency projects. But I think, like I said, that it's about time that should end. As Mr. C had rightly noted, there's a high possibility that, that they can influence how the allocation of resources are done towards their projects because they have oversight over the budget sessions of the MDA. So maybe it will be something that we hope that this President Tinubu would be willing to look at, if ever.
All right, Shewon says, you don't integrate people living with disabilities into larger society by magic. The larger society itself needs to be built on a proper foundation to start with. Take the example of a visually impaired person being able to walk to the bus stop on their own. In other climes, they have tactile markings on the road edges, crossings, and such to guide them. In Nigeria, there are no roads. Where there are roads, there are no markings, even for the non-visually impaired. You don't build a society on empty air. Is it local governments that want to provide hearing aid loops at non-existent bus stops and train stations, for example? The cart before the horse, as usual. Yes, Mr. C.
So very quickly, in developed countries where they have aids and provisions for visually impaired people and people with disabilities, it's predicated on the premise that everybody there will behave responsibly. Now, how do you do that on Nigerian roads when you have commercial bus drivers who literally behave as if they are not bound by traffic rules and regulations? So it's extremely frustrating, but that's what it is.
Okay. And let's see. This is from Dr. I. He says the approach by the media playing ostrich and not interrogating the government is worrisome. There's no factual reason for any of the removals of the CBN or EFCC leaderships, but we're fed innuendos. We should demand open and deep audits of the tenures of the leadership. Otherwise, there's nothing positive to spin on these suspensions. Absolutely, the citizens also play a massive role. I mean, you elect the government, you have representatives, you can choose to ask to see documents. There are bills that actually give you that right to know. And it's very important that citizens are aware of the massive power that they have. All right, 0809 440 981. And let's go on to the next story. This one is coming from Punch. Okay, Premium Times. All right, so we'll go on to Premium Times. And this has to do with the FX situation. The CBN has announced the unification of all segments of the Nigerian forex markets. Now, The Apex Bank announced the collapse of all windows into the investors and exporters window.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. Now it's crunch time. Nigerians need to buckle up because more interesting times are upon us. What the CBN has done is it has literally collapsed all the discordant forex rates within the official window into one, and it's willing buyer, willing seller. So what that means is the parties to the trade will decide what the price is. Now, from the first day of operation, what we saw was an official rate converging towards the black market rate. And we're seeing figures like 740, 750 naira to the dollar yesterday. Now, if that continues to happen, then it would mean that the differential between the official rate and the black market rate will be less than 5%. Now, what are the implications of this for everyday Nigerians? One, this is hard, shocking news. The price of petrol is going to go up again. Reason being, none of the refineries is up and running yet. And strangely enough, the refinery in Lekki was commissioned just before the last guy left. And then subsequently, the owners of that refinery get a fuel import license, clearly showing that whatever was done at that commissioning level should not have been done.
But the fuel import license, isn't that open to everyone?
No, here's the point. You own a refinery. You have indicated or suggested to Nigerians your first batch of products will hit the market in July this year. Why do you need a fuel import license if you're going to start operations in July? Remember, this is the second week. In fact, we started the third week of June. So it just shows that there's something fishy going on there. Now, because we still continue to import petrol, we'll be importing at the international price. Now that the official rate is 750, and the NNPC has to bring in petrol because for now it still remains the sole importer of petrol into Nigeria, increased costs for the NNPC. Who is going to ultimately carry that burden? Ordinary motorists like the three of us seated in the studio. Ordinary motorists like our listeners listening today to the show. Now, when that happens, in addition to the increase in price of petrol, right, and we expect petrol to now settle around the price of diesel because diesel is deregulated and currently the price is in the 600 band region. Prices of goods and services will go up, especially for goods that are imported into Nigeria for which there are no readily local substitutes available. Cars, the prices of cars will go up. Your computers, your equipment, your machinery, your cosmetics, your beverages, your snacks, everything is going to go up. And if we think we're having a rough time now, just wait and see what the next 4 or 5 months will unfold.
Mr. C, can you sprinkle some happy dust right now?
No, there's no. So there's no happy dust. Sadly, there's no happy. I'm not taking any joy or delight in this.
What if we, okay, so you know how foreign investors had always complained about the exchange rates being a delimiter to their entry. So what if, this action serves as some sort of attractant to bringing some of them in?
So I like that some will come in, but they will wait until the backlog of repatriations has been fully cleared out. Because there's no point rushing in with your money if you can't get it out. So rents are going to go up. Everything's going to go up. It's just very interesting times.
All right, let's look at a few messages and then we'll be off. Emeka says, come to Ago Palace Way, Lagos, and see tricycle riders riding on pedestrian walkways, even with school children walking on them. Is it the people with disabilities they would respect if a way is made for them? We actually are a lawless society. JP says, other marketers will also import from July 1st. I do agree the refinery might not be ready as soon as we thought. And that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you for your messages. Thank you for listening. And special thanks as